we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to call to order the November 19th Design Review Board meeting. And we'll start with introductions, starting with Cameron.
Push the stem down into the thing.
Locked and loaded. Cameron Boland, AIA representative.
Rick Blackburn, Historic Zoning Commission.
Perry Childress, East Tennessee Community Design Center.
Tony Allen, Downtown Development Representative.
Matthew DeBard-Laban, Downtown Knoxville Alliance.
Sarah Martin, Urban Design Representative.
Laura Lynn, Downtown Residential Representative.
Jared Worsham, Downtown Resident Representative.
Suzanne Taravella, Neighborhood Representative.
Dallas Yarman, Knoxville, Knox County Planning.
Melinda Woolert, Knoxville, Knox County Planning.
Samuel Hawk, also with Knoxville, Knox County Planning.
Christina McGraw-Stillery, City Law Department.
Mark Reel, Plans Review and Inspections.
Thank you, everybody. The minutes of the October 14th meeting are in your packet. And has everybody had a chance to review those? And does anybody have any comments? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. Samuel, are you ready? Yeah, okay. We'll go ahead and get started with the certificates of appropriateness, and the first one is at 412 South Gay Street.
Do we have level ones?
Oh, we do. I'm sorry. Yep, go ahead.
Before we discuss the level 1 cases, I want to share that staff will be making some changes to the Design Review Board application process, beginning with the January meeting in 2026. We are reviewing the current cadence of the meeting application deadlines in relation to the meetings, and will likely be proposing to move the deadline back a little to allow more time for review and revision processes.
I don't think the meeting has started yet.
We can hear you, Mr. Forrestal. Okay, I think I'm muted. Can you hear us?
I'm muted.
Now we can.
Yes, now I can.
Thank you. Sorry. All right. So again, we are currently reviewing the current cadence of the meeting application deadlines in relation to the meetings, and will likely be proposing to move the deadline back a little to allow more time for a review and revision process. Currently, the deadline is 3 weeks, 3 days prior to the meeting, but we post all meeting materials 1 week prior to the meeting, so the current timeline only allows 2 weeks for review and revisions. By increasing this deadline, we hope to be able to work through items that are not compliant, which would cut down the number of the conditions attached to the COA. It should also expedite the permitting process. Changing the meeting deadlines will require an amendment to the administrative rules and procedures, so you will see this on the December meeting agenda. We're happy to answer any questions you may have about this change.
Thank you.
Okay.
Does the board want to discuss any of that, just to be fair?
Do you know how much more time you're going to request? An extra week?
We're looking at maybe an extra week or two.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right, then, moving on for level 1 approval since the last meeting. We had a new parking pad added to a project at 3215 Johnston Street, some minor revisions to foundation height and setbacks. We also had a revision to change the 0-step entrance to an accessibility ramp using the same footprint as the existing concrete walkway. And we also had some new secondary structures, so a new carport, a new wooden shed, and they're just adding a concrete patio in the back.
Okay, now we'll move on to the certificates of appropriateness with Samuel.
Thank you. The first item is 11A 25DT, exterior rehabilitation for the building on 412 South K Street. The description of work includes renovation of the existing storefronts. The leftmost storefront bay will be maintained as is, and the third bay, the operable doors of the third bay will be relocated to the fourth bay. A new wooden door featuring a circular stained glass design and side lights will be installed on the third bay. The new door is slightly narrower than the existing storefront to be replaced. An additional wall area will be added on two sides of the door, matching the existing walls of the storefront bay. A painted aluminum canopy measuring 8 feet 2 inch deep by 46 feet wide will be installed over the existing lower level transom above the storefront doors. The canopy will project about 8 feet from the building, and it will be 9 feet 2 inch of clear height from the sidewalk level. It is supported by 5 angled metal rod connected to the building, and the masonry piers on either side of the storefront. The details of the attachment to the masonry piers to site is not included in the plans. The applicant has stated that the canopy will be attached to the steel structure behind the metal walls on two sides of the building, in addition to the 5 rods. The project also includes some renovation of the rail guards in front of the store, but the rail guards and the patio and the sidewalk furniture are not permanently attached to the building, and therefore outside the scope of this review. Overall, the renovation of storefronts with a largely consistent rhythm of entrance and windows meet the design guidelines. The entrance is recessed from the exterior building facade to provide depth to the facade, and it aligns to the storefront system in the base to either side. The entrance is proportionate to the building height and width. Although if we go back to the previous slide, the original building did not include any canopy, but the building to the left did historically, and it still has a canopy. And the old JCPenney building at around 1960s to 70s had a canopy, but I couldn't verify the exact date of this picture. The proposed flat canopy can be considered since it is of human scale and reduce the mass of the building as experienced from the street level. The board should discuss the arched portion of the canopy. The elevation drawing includes some signs, however, they do not provide enough detail about the illumination and installation method. So the signage should be returned to the board as a separate application. Staff recommends approval of Certificate 11A 25TT subject to 2 conditions. I want to add that we initially posted our staff report with 1 condition, and the second condition was added later. Staff, in our review, staff missed that the door design included some additional walls. So the second condition is added later to balance the additional wall area in the third bayfront. The second condition is that the first condition is signage to return to the board as separate application. Second condition is that the side lights of the proposed door and the glass panes of the first, second, and fourth bay shall be transparent.
Thank you. Is the applicant present, or are you finished?
The applicant will be joined online.
Oh, they're joining online. Great. Can you hear us? Hello?
What's their name?
Keith.
I don't see a Keith on here. There's a phone number.
This is the architect. Can you hear me?
Keith, can you give us your name and address, please?
Sorry, can you all hear me?
We can hear you now. Can you give us your name and address, please?
My name is Keith Schutz. Address is 191 Peachtree, Atlanta, Georgia. I'm the architect for the project.
Great. Do you have anything to add to Samuel's comments?
No, it's just that, we haven't fully structurally engineered it. It's conceptual in nature right now, but we understand that there's going to be some, connections that will have to be designed by an engineer.
Okay. We'll open it up to board discussion then. touched the screen again.
Yeah, that would really be my only, it's really echoey now. The structural connection back to that transom window seems a bit, seems a little bit complicated, and for the fact that it's going to have to be pretty finessed, it would be, we may need to say something to staff approval of bringing that information back whenever they have that engineering, just to understand that they're not adding any cross members across the glass even any more than it has to be, and damaging anything that was there with the vertical jams in between it.
Understand, and that is the intention.
I have a little bit of a concern with the arch in the canopy, not because of the way it looks now, but just because of the nature of buildings and businesses downtown. And right now it looks really integrated into the graphics and makes sense. But if this building or this space changes hands and the canopy remains, then I worry that it's not going to make sense and fit in with the context of that area.
Well, we're designing it to hopefully be there forever, but we can't anticipate the next business.
Yeah, that is our hope always, but not always reality.
Yeah, one thing in someone arguing for it is that the arches of the windows above, so there is some sort of play with that, but it is a little bit forced, I agree, and could be easily not appropriate if that circular graphic on the door isn't there.
It personally doesn't bother me too much, given that here we're seeing a tenant change out with this level of renovation, and it's likely this level of renovation would just happen again with a new tenant. And if it's a metal canopy, I don't know how easy those are to modify, but it doesn't seem like it'd be a major obstacle rather than be tied to that branding. And overall, I think the scale and language is very harmonious with the streetscape there.
Are you planning on retaining the lights that are currently on the, I don't know the technical term, but below that kind of second story of windows? They're not reflected in the, are you retaining the lights that are currently there that kind of hang down? They're not reflected in the renderings.
Yeah, all the existing glass that is above the doors will remain unaltered.
He was asking for the lights. There's lighting above the transom, and he was asking if the lighting is going to remain.
They're the gooseneck sconces that are up above the transom.
Gooseneck light? So, no, the gooseneck lights aren't really necessary anymore because we're going to have this roof there. There would be downlights under the canopy at the dining area. And then the intention is that the sign is the thing that is illuminated when they get that approved separately.
That makes sense. Okay. Do we have any other comments?
I agree with what others have said. I think it's appropriate for the scale of the street here, and the arch definitely reinforces kind of the overall aesthetic of the building. I do. My one question is about the steel gauge of the canopy, and just making sure that it's of sufficient gauge to not have any oil canning. I know that would be pretty detrimental to the effect you're trying to go for here. So have you researched or specified the gauge for that steel?
No, we have not. I mean, we would go, once again, when we have structural engineering and a subcontractor that would be making that, that's what they would help us determine that.
Understood. Well, I'd like to just make it a note to coordinate that as well.
So is the feeling of the board to approve with conditions or to postpone until we have more specific structural information?
I'd probably say approve with conditions as long as it's understood, and I think this is common protocol now, that if any of the engineering changes the look, then it needs to come back.
I mean, are there other examples of canopies, like slicing through the transom on Gay Street? Like what this one would be doing? I know that you'd looked up some historic examples of the building, but if we just like open the street view on the street, it'd be.
There are other canopies that actually cover it if they're more traditional, like fabric canopy.
Right.
That's triangular shaped. They're actually covering that glass.
Yeah.
So we're trying not to cover it.
Yeah.
Both Mast and Kilwins have it.
Got it.
And down at Woodruff's.
And the brewery. Yeah.
Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve application 11A 25DT, contingent upon the conditions recommended by staff.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Can I clarify that? Or just that would include the signage returning. I just want to be sure. Okay. Yeah.
Would the board add a third condition for the structural detail to be reviewed by staff? This is not reflected in the two condition here.
Yeah, I'd add the condition that the structure, when the structural design is understood, that be submitted to staff for approval to verify that it stays within design intent that was approved by the review board.
Are you okay with that, Sarah?
And the second. Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Christina, are you clear? Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that one carries. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Next up, we have 706 Walnut Street, which is 11B25DT.
The Design Review Board previously reviewed the exterior rehabilitation and signage proposal for the Walnut Building in April 2022, and it has 2 revisions in 2023. The previous approval and the drawings of that are located on the right bottom corner of the slide included 2 wall sign on the Walnut Street elevation and 1 wall sign and 1 projecting sign on Church Avenue elevation. The applicant is now proposing 2 illuminated sign, 2 projecting sign that are illuminated and 1 wall sign that are not illuminated. So as you can see on the slide, there will be 1 wall sign on the east elevation that will be visible from the parking lot. There will be another wall sign on the Church Avenue elevation above the 2nd story. There will be a wall sign on the ground floor of Walnut Avenue, which will be non-illuminated. And this will be 5 feet 2 inches from the ground level. There is a projecting sign on the Walnut Avenue elevation, which will actually be installed on the Church Avenue elevation. And another projecting sign 32 feet above the grade level on the Walnut Avenue elevation on the wall area to the right. Overall, the proposal meets the intent of the design guidelines by providing the recommended sign types of the grid sub-district. While the proposed signs are somewhat larger in scale, they are proportionate to the building and the wall surfaces where they are proposed. The guidelines recommend projecting signs with a maximum size of 9 square feet. However, the board has the authority to approve larger signs. The previous approval also included 2 signs that are larger than the recommended 9 square feet. The plans do not include any sectional drawing details about the mounting and illumination method. The applicant has shared additional details this afternoon. We reflected a condition that this shall be submitted to staff for review and approval, but staff did not review the new details that were sent this afternoon.
Is the applicant present for this one?
Yes, I am.
And the
owner is also here as well. If you need.
Great, thank you. Can you give us your names and addresses, please?
Yes, my name is Irina Stevens, and I'm representing the sign manufacturer from Columbia, South Carolina at 5 Technology Circle.
And Mohammed Abbas, representing the owner, or I am one of the 3 owners, and 625 South K Street.
Great, thank you. Do you have anything to add to Samuel's comments?
Thank you very much, Samuel. And the additional comment that I do have, that right now we have conducted the technical survey and we're trying to determine if the 2 illuminated wall letter sets will require the face jumps that we're trying to avoid at this time.
Can you switch to the slide that shows the building and where all of these are located? Yeah. Okay, we'll open it up to board discussion.
Yeah, if I remember the original COA on this, they were going to paint this building. And so my question is this the final color of the building?
Yes, I can speak to that. We were originally going to paint it. However, if you look in the bottom left corner, Street View 2, that image, that is there's a church right there, and they did not give us permission to place any type of scaffolding in order to paint that side of the building. So because we were not able to get the permission to do that, we spoke with, I believe the architect spoke with Samuel or somebody to see if we could just leave it alone, and the answer was yes. So we decided we're going to just power wash it and not paint the building. So the existing brick color will remain as the final color.
How are you going to power wash it without scaffolding?
So it's already been done. It was done with, there's a company, I can't remember the name of it, but they sit on boatswain's chairs. And so they kind of rig their way down, like
Gotcha.
rappel their way down as they power wash it.
Okay, thank you. So this is a lot of signage, and I think that it's relevant to have signs on each side of the building to, share your brand and make sure that the building has good identification. There's a couple of signs on the same facade. Can you talk about why that is?
Which ones do you specifically have questions about? On this facade?
Well, there's
right here.
The one I'm thinking of, I believe, is number 4 on the diagram.
Number 4 is the street level sign. It will be a small, I believe, about 1.5 feet by 1.5 feet signage. This is the big blade sign right here to identify the building going down the Wall Street. And then there's also a pedestrian level sign, number 4, which is this right here, exactly. The Holiday Inn Express. It will be on one of the columns. So if I'm not mistaken, it's about 1.5 feet by 1.5 feet pedestrian level signage, versus the blade sign will be such that people driving in can see the hotel.
So, okay.
Will the 2 Yasin signs be remaining?
I'm sorry?
Will the 2
Yes, we will not be
existing?
removing the Yasin signs. The Yasin sign will be there. I believe it's only one on the corner, but yes, we're not.
Yeah, Street
taking
View
it down.
1 shows it. And that means that Yasin's is staying there.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you are correct. There was 2 signs. That second one on the right will not be there. It'll only be the corner one. Because the second one on the right is where the hotel entrance is, so that'll be confusing.
And the blade sign will be up above it? But I guess on a different elevation on Walnut.
Correct.
This is Walnut elevation with the blade sign, the big blade sign right there at the end of the building.
I guess the
And
one on the
small
stair
blade
tower.
sign is the street level going down the Church Street. Because it's kind of in the corner of two streets, so we need to position the signs so they're seen from traffic going all directions.
But the big sign at the top is on the same side as the smaller blade sign that's like at the third floor.
Yes, number 3 is the pedestrian level sign, right at the corner of the entrance from the Wall Street and Church Street. This big sign right here, this is to identify the signage going, I'm trying to see the name of the street, I apologize, let me look at that. That's the signage going down the West Church Street, so it will be seen coming to the hotel from the West Church Avenue. And then the number 2 sign is the wall sign. Basically, the sign that number 1 is facing that St. John's parking lot, and that will be seen from the West Church Avenue. And wall sign number, location number 2 is seen more so at the pedestrian level because it is between the second and third floor. And it will be as people are driving down the Wall Street, they will see that. As they're driving Church Street, they will see that.
Do we know what the difference is between the 9 square feet that's allowed and what they're asking for as far as square footage goes?
So this is one of the wall signs, and I need to look at the actual agenda package.
Okay. I was just curious, like how much more signage they're asking for.
Yeah, is the rule that the signage is an aggregate or is it per sign? Is the rule 9 square feet per sign? But then you can't have like 20 signs.
Right.
So it might be what you're asking.
Yes.
The design guidelines say projecting signs of modest size, 9 square feet maximum.
It states that if larger signs are to be proposed, it needs to be approved by board.
Yeah.
So the wall sign on the wall sign on the top of the building facing the parking lot is 223 square feet. And then the wall sign between the second and third story on the Walnut Street elevation, on the Church Avenue elevation is 65 square feet.
I'll say, so the guidelines are really geared toward, especially from a signage standpoint, for the pedestrian level, because it talks about blade signs or hanging signs of modest size, like 9 square feet or less, that's lower on the building, and it also talks about signage, wall signs being on the signboard, lower in the building. So it really doesn't address the larger signs that go up higher on the building. So I think, that's where board's consideration really is most key.
I think all of the signs make sense to me except number 3. I can't understand that one. No, I'm sorry, not 3, 4. The one on the far right, yep. Because it looks too high to be part of the pedestrian experience. And there's already signage on the other side. Nobody's coming from that direction.
Is that the main visual you would have if you're driving on Walnut?
Correct. As if you're coming from the river towards the building on Walnut, you would see that.
And there's no signage on the church side of the building. So that would be the only one visible from a car on Walnut Street. Besides the very small brass one on the column there.
Yeah, that's number 4 is
Yeah.
the brass column.
Yeah.
Number 5 is the blade sign.
Yeah, and that's the one that addresses Walnut Street. Yeah.
Oh, 4 is the pedestrian level one.
Yeah.
That one on the far right is
That
5?
should be 5.
That's 5. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And then
Well, can I put a little thought in there in the thinking process? We were looking and driving on Google around the same grid district, and we saw a lot of signs. For example, there's a Tennessee sign, there is a parking lot sign right down the street that are blade sign consistent with blade signs. It looks like in this particular district are something that a lot of other sites are using to identify their buildings.
How is the height of that one determined?
It is about 11 and a little bit over 11 and a half feet, if I'm not mistaken. And it will be 32 feet from grade.
Is that for like optimal view from a certain distance or anything like that? Because it looks arbitrary on the building is why I'm asking.
A Holiday Inn has the certain brand standards for their signage that we have to follow. So this was the optimal size that was selected for this particular building to be consistent with the surrounding signage in the area.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like me to show you the pictures of the Tennessee and the parking sign, just so you can see how it relates to this particular sign?
I don't think so. No, we don't have a way to do that right now, but thank you.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion or concern?
I have a comment about sign number 3, the blade sign, the smaller one. It looks like the Yasin sign is on that corner facing that street. Is the intent to move that Yasin sign to the other corner, or will the hotel sign go on the adjacent side of that column?
It will be in place of that Yasi sign, that pink sign that you're referring to will no longer be there because it will be the Holiday Inn. So the intent is that the pink signs that you're referring to will not be there.
So
and
will
be
the
replaced by the Holiday Inn.
So the other
No,
Yasin sign will be the one that stays? Is that?
Is
that
Yasin
correct?
still going to be in this
Mohammed
location?
Mo-
Yeah, that's a mistake. We will have to have a Yasin sign on that corner. We might have the Yasin sign on the alternating corner. Can you guys hear me?
yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So yeah, Yasin's will remain here. They will be moving back once the construction is completed, and we'll have to coordinate on which side of that column the Holiday Inn Express sign is and which side of the column the Yasin sign is, but we will have to have it on one of the two sides of this corner. We will not have the other Yasin sign, the one to the right, 2 columns over. That one will not be there because that will be confusing with the hotel entrance, but we will have a Yasin sign on that corner. So, I didn't realize this until you just mentioned it, but we might ask maybe if we can move the blade sign up a touch so that they can be next to each other or above each other, but I'm not sure if how do we do that?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yep, understood. And then I also see that particular blade sign is a little bit larger than the 9 square feet. Was there a reason for it being closer to 12.5 square feet?
Once again, this is the Holiday Inn Express guidelines. So this was the closest sign that they had in their brand standards that we could select. So our decision on this particular size was based from that.
I think it'd be helpful to see the size of that with Yasin's if they're going to stack, so that in comparison, and even if it is the brand standard, I bet if it goes down to the 9 square feet, it'd still be legible as a blade sign if that's Knoxville's guidelines. But I think to be able to really understand it and approve, which I don't know that it needs to come back for it. It might be staff approval, but we can't really visualize how those would be stacked. We need to know the elevations of the 2 blade signs with Yasin's remaining or being adjusted to really give it the thumbs up or not.
We can provide that, but because, if I'm not mistaken, the pedestrian signs have to be a certain height from grade.
Yeah.
So it will be such that the different elevation of the column will be used most likely for the Holiday Inn Express sign.
I'm not sure how the rest of the board feels, but I actually think I would prefer it to be on the adjacent corners to one another as opposed to stacked, because there's that canopy there as well, so you kind of have to contend with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Correct. It will most likely be on the elevation where your mouse is right now, on the other elevation of that column.
Yeah, and as ownership, I don't have a problem with that. I think we'd be okay with it, and I think Yassine would be fine with it as well.
You could also move the Yassine sign to the Walnut elevation, and then you can keep the Holiday Inn Express blade on the church elevation.
What are the requirements if they were to move an existing sign? Do we have to make that a condition in the application that that's okay, or like a variance or staff approval?
I think if the board wanted to leave that to staff review, we could for relocation, as long as it's the same. You know, they aren't changing the sign in any way, and it's in the same general location. And if they're not moving it to an opposite corner, like total opposite side, a corner of the structure, something like that, I think we could do that. Yeah, as long as you'll make it very clear what our parameters are, we can do that.
Yeah, I think that's what we would do, and I just think that it needs to be submitted so that it is codified what they decided they're going to actually install, and it's documented.
I would just like to point out that based on what I can see on Google Street View, the Embassy on Gay Street only has one blade sign for the hotel. And then, of course, you've got K-Brew, Copita, and all those other businesses. I don't know. I think 5 signs is a bit excessive. And I don't think stacking them is my perspective is to not stack them.
I agree. I think, we have a standard for a reason, and we can make exceptions, but I feel like this is a really big exception, and I'm not sure that it's necessary, especially in the modern age where a lot of people are probably going to be led to this place by an app on a phone, that we need 5 different signs on one building. I feel like that's too much.
Yeah, and I don't disagree. I think that I would think that also too, the fact that the brick is going to remain the historic brick color, that the restraint of where and the placement of the signs is that much more important. And I think like I think it's number maybe like 2, or some of that more like elegant linear signage can fit in and then kind of go away, but it also is very blatant. Like this is the Holiday Inn Express, so like that one, and then just the one at the entry would be enough to really let you know. But that's a good point, Jared, that the one directly adjacent to it has just the one main sign for the entire hotel on that corner. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, the Embassy Suites on Gay Street is specifically what I was referring to. But I also believe that the Hilton only has maybe 1 or 2 signs, but there's also a difference where this building has, I think, 4 sides of the building are, visible versus, the Hilton has 2.5 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I did notice the dual.
If I may, I was going to mention that our operator for the Holiday Inn Express is actually the same operator as the Embassy Suites that owns the Embassy Suites. And we discussed this with him, and he said that they were able to get a waiver because they only had 1 or 2 exterior-facing sides of the building, where this would be a little bit harder, but I don't know if that helps or hurts your decision.
The dual brand Courtyard, Marriott, and Renaissance has 2 blades, but does not have the building mounted signs. And that's on Church.
I also think it's a little bit confusing to have one of the blade signs near the Yassine's entrance and then another one indicating the actual entrance. I think it would be appropriate to have the one at the actual entrance and the big one up top, because I do think that there's some appeal to being able to see what building is identified with which brand from afar. But the blade sign that's in the middle there, the number 5, seems excessive to me.
We keep kind of getting back to the blade sign on church is not necessary because you have a wall-mounted sign on church. You've got a blade on Walnut and the large high sign on the parking lot side, which I think is good for people. You can see that coming from the interstate. And its size doesn't bother me because it's 100 feet in the air. But we keep narrowing in on the redundancy on church.
I agree.
Just a point of clarification on the guidelines. The guidelines, what ability do the guidelines give us to say you could have 4 signs versus 5 signs versus, is it more so just the square footage of the total signage, or if it's...
There's not a lot of guidance from that perspective. There's the maximum amount of signage that the zoning ordinance allows, which is based on the square footage of your facade, which is a lot here. So, that, by right, they would have quite a bit of signage allowed. The guidelines just really speak to the pedestrian level side of the signage and not the total large package, unfortunately. The hotels I can think of, like the Hyatt, has a blade sign, and then it has a large wall-mounted sign on the rear. Those are two totally different elevations. I can't remember if they have any more. I know they have business signs. I think, and I was just looking at the Embassy Suites. I know when they came through, they proposed a large sign on the elevator tower, which I think was denied because it was facing the residential structure next door. I can't think of any other examples that the board specifically reviewed.
Point of clarification on the church side, Church Avenue. Is it just one Holiday Inn Express sign facing church, and the redundancy that we're discussing is the fact that there's a Yassine sign competing for space there, or are there 2 signs on church?
I think there's one on the building and the blade sign.
That is correct, just 2.
Yeah, you can see the one on the building and then the blade sign at the corner are both on church and address church.
Got it, okay.
Would it be appropriate to make a motion to approve all except that blade sign at the corner? And, they would be able to come back with another sign request with more thought, detail, or consideration on that one. So I think the rest of them all land very appropriately, but that one's proportioned so much different from the other blade sign. It really doesn't fit in. And you've got your Yassine sign on that corner. The wall sign addresses church to where if you're on church, you can see it. And you'll know it's the Holiday Inn. If you're coming from the corner this one's at, you'll see the blade sign on Walnut as well. So I believe that should be sufficient branding.
And there's already branding at the pedestrian level at the entrance.
And you've got the one at the entry. Yeah.
You go ahead.
Yeah, if that's what the board wants to move forward with, is a motion for that, I would just name the number of the sign so it's clear which one. I think it's number 3 that you're speaking about. So, number 5 is the one on Walnut that's higher up and larger. Is that the?
Melinda,
He was talking about number 3.
Could you go to that picture where they have the numbers in orange showing The site plan, yeah.
I think we should do 3 and 5.
Yeah, just for the record purposes, I think it would be good to say, you know, we approve 1, 2, and 3, but not 4 and 5, you know, along those lines. So it's clear from the record what's being delegated to staff versus denied, so.
All right, let's do a motion.
I do have one. Sorry, I'm not
That's okay.
trying to prolong this. I do have one quick question. I think when we first initially started discussing this, I think there was maybe a comment made about maybe some electrical and that impacting something. Am I misremembering that for the applicant?
Yes, you're correct. We're in process of determining whether we will be able to make, because of the wall signs, well, each letter will need to have an electrical penetrations. And there are some obstructions of the stairways and the rooms that we're facing. So we're trying to determine that, and we're in the process to see if we can do that without the phase jumps, or if possibly phase jumps would be allowed for the wall signs. We're trying to avoid them, but I kind of wanted to have your feedback on that.
There's also some structural limitations to the building itself. It's a post-tension concrete building, and core drilling through the slabs are a little complicated. So the locations of where the sign,
that is correct,
especially the number 5 blade sign, where that one is, and some of these other signs, exactly the location of them was also dictated by how we can get electrical to each of these signs. So because we wanted to maintain as much of the existing building as possible without making modifications, just so that it looks nicer, there were some limitations there.
So visually, how would that impact what you've submitted here?
I don't know yet.
Basically, when we're talking about the phase jumps, what you see in the wall sign number 1 and the wall sign number 2, it will be the red building. So we're keeping the original color of the building. And what we will do is we will have the conduit, which is the same color as the building or the mortar, depending where it falls. There will be a wire from letter to letter because of the structural limitations, like Mo mentioned, and it is a rather thick wall with some structural obstructions. And we're trying to determine at this time if we'll be able to do electrical penetrations for all the letters, or there might be a possibility, or if it will be allowed by the board for us to have the phase jumps due to structural limitations.
What does everybody, I don't know what the board thinks about that. I'm curious to hear from board members.
Well, even carefully placed and laid out conduit and wire between things colored to match, that's not unusual and would not be visual, especially at the distance we've got on the height of these signs here.
Yeah, I mean, you're saying for the phase jumping, Perry, between them? Yeah. The conduit between them? Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be honestly a bit absurd to have a penetration in that post-tension concrete for every single letter of Holiday Inn Express. So yeah, I don't think that's a huge issue personally.
Mm-hmm.
But that needs to be a part of the approval, though, since this is new information.
So can we please have... Correct, and we are trying to avoid those phase jumps. If we could, we are definitely going to avoid them, but if we could have basically a note stating that if those are necessary, that the board would approve the phase jumps.
So we need to talk about what signs we're approving. We need to talk about a condition that keeps or submits the scene sign back in an elevation drawing to be reviewed by staff. And we also need a condition that I think would bring the final decision back of the phase jumping or not based on the electrical penetrations. But I think the biggest one is the first one about, are we saying that there's a sign that should be eliminated or not based on everyone's thoughts?
I like Perry's suggestion of eliminating sign number 3 and keeping Yassine's sign where it is and keeping that corner from being further cluttered. There's also 4 stop signs right there. So I would like to make a motion that they have to submit details of the internal illumination for review and approval by planning staff. Secondly, as far as how it's wired, they have to provide some level of detail for staff to approve that visible wire. And then third, that we eliminate sign number 3 and approve signs 1, 2, 4, and 5.
Great motion.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that one carries. Thank you. Next up, we have. Yes. Okay. Next up, we have 112 South Gay Street, which is case number 11C25DT.
This project includes the installation of a new rooftop deck on the Emporium building at 112 South Gay Street, and the installation of 1 door and 2 windows on the abutting building at 106 Gay Street, so that the rooftop deck can be accessed from the abutting 4th floor of the building. The rooftop deck is measured 13 feet by 20 feet, and it will be surrounded by 7 feet and 6 feet tall privacy screen on the rear side and half of the south side, and then on the front side it will be enclosed by 3 feet 6 inch tall black powder coated cable railing that you can see in the image. The 1 door and 2 windows will be installed on the abutting wall. The details of the door and window seal and header are not provided in this application. Rooftop additions can be approved on historic buildings when they are not seen from adjoining streets and sidewalks. The applicant has provided a line of sight illustrating that the proposed decks will not be visible from the sidewalk across the street. The structure will not alter, obscure, or destroy significant feature of historic resources. The 4-story wall facing the Emporium building currently include no opening except for an access door, and the proposed window and doors will likely be partially visible from the street. Overall, the proposal meets the design guideline. Staff recommends approval of Certificate 11C25 with one condition, that revised plans with deck height and details of the header and seals of the doors and windows to be submitted for review and approval by planning staff.
Thank you. Is the applicant present?
Yes, it's Patrick.
Can you give us your address, please?
811 Deary Street.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add to Samuel's comments?
No, I don't think so. We can definitely provide some of those details for sure.
Great, thank you. Board discussion?
I have one annoying question. Is that not a firewall that you're putting the door and windows through between those 2 separate structures? And how would you address that, or is that's for my inspector over here?
That'd be something that would be reviewed in plans review. I wouldn't be able to answer that today.
I think, weren't those buildings reconstructed as one structure essentially, I think?
Internally?
Yeah.
I've
So
done
I think that may not be an issue, but that can also be discussed, I guess, in permitting if
I
needed.
did as-built on the Emporium, and I know they have the 2 buildings have some strange association with each other, but that's my question. And there's means of fire protection for openings that they could address, but I was just curious if they had looked into that yet.
Yeah, we haven't looked into that yet. You're right that they do have an association. The 2 buildings are connected on floors 2 and 3, but that's about the limit of my expertise on speaking to that.
Okay. Any other discussion? If not, we will entertain a motion.
I motion to approve per staff recommendation.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That one passes. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Next up, we have 515 Cafego Place, which is 11D25 DT.
This proposal is for two identical non-illuminated channel letter wall signs for the 5-story multifamily building that is currently under construction. The sign will measure 2 feet wide by 26 feet tall for a total of 52 square feet and will have 1.5-inch return to be mounted on the fiber cement boards with 3.5-inch toggle anchors, as you can see on the detail B. One sign will be placed on the south elevation facing Cafego Place, and the other will be placed on the east elevation facing the site's parking lot. In the elevation drawing, there are partial elevation drawings, but you can see the location of the sign, and the label is marked with red bubbles. The top of the signs will align with the top of 5th-story windows and will be approximately 25 feet above the ground level. The design review board approved certificate 4E24TT for the construction of this building, and one of the conditions of approval was that the signage must be submitted to the board as a separate application. The proposed sign reflects the recommended signs for the Boulevard District, and the scale and location of the proposed sign are compatible with the height of the building. The plans note that signs will be lit externally. However, the applicant has stated that this will be non-illuminated signs. Staff recommends approval of certificate 11D25DT subject to the following condition. The signs shall be placed centrally on the fiber cement board, maintaining an equal distance from windows on both sides, and that any future external lighting for these signs must be reviewed and approved by planning staff.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? Can you give us your name and address, please?
If you'll just press, there's a little person on that up there. If you'll.
The name's Doyle Sieber, and the address is 427 White Crest Drive, Maryville.
Great, thank you. Do you have anything to add to Samuel's comments?
You got to press that and keep it. Just press it once. Yep.
It's on now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Samuel and I discussed this, and I spoke with the architects and the builders. The original thought was to do these illuminated, and that was canceled. And so that's why there's no illumination, and there's no need for that. And these are just flat cutout letters fixed to the building, as as you mentioned, and there's nothing else we need. It's really simple, so it should be easy.
So when you have that zone identified where the signage is going to go, there's no blade or anything coming out. It's just the
No.
letters on the wall.
Yes, and,
Okay.
and flush mounted.
Okay. All right. Do we have any discussion about that? What's the finish?
It's a matte finish,
Okay.
black.
Oh, okay.
I do appreciate that there's no signage like facing the row houses on the
Mhm.
other side. And noticing that, it did make me wonder. It's like it's a not a stigma. I can't think of the right word. Any multifamily building has a name, and I always find it odd that we have to name them. It's housing. It's a multifamily project. I get that, like we were just talking so much about the Hilton and trying to advertise themselves. I'm sure that's a lot longer conversation about why a multifamily project needs that as well, but like kind of leaning in towards, not in our downtown, but more towards missing middle, smaller scale housing and density. We wouldn't be putting, big plastered sign on that even if it had multifamily in it. But it's something I think to consider as we look at more and more multifamily being built in Knoxville, like how much signage is important to and needed in our downtown, especially, luckily this one's not illuminated, but when it starts to be like these glowing neon signs almost, it seems to me that it's a bit additive and not necessarily needed. But that's not for this project. I'm just saying that as we're all talking as design discussions, so.
Yeah, I think this is tastefully done. They found a good place to put it that makes sense with the rhythm of the rest of the patterns on the building. And like you said, it's simple and
Simple, and that's what they took into consideration when doing this.
I would make a motion to approve based on staff recommendation.
I'll second.
we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that one carries. Thank you. Okay, next up, we're going to transition to infill housing, and the first case there is 3547 Oswald Street, which is case 9F25IH.
Right. This case is for revisions to a multifamily building approved by the board in February 2024 that is part of the Arlington Downs mixed-use development on an 8-acre parcel in Lincoln Park. The building features 3 sections, the south section with bay window forms, the north section with bay window forms, and the west section that connects them together. The 6 elevations are shown here in side-by-side comparison with those approved in 8G23IH, which are outlined in yellow. The current case was postponed in October to allow the applicant to revise the plans to reintroduce the front porches. We received public comments both for and against this development last month, which were read at the meeting. The application has been revised to include a new plat subdividing this phase of the development from the larger 8-acre parcel to reintroduce front porches along Oswald Street, to remove the second-story balconies along Oswald Street, and to remove the Colonial Avenue entrance from the intermediate gravel drive and parking. The proposed plat reflects the boundaries for this phase of the development and includes pedestrian and vehicular access easements that correspond to the site plan approved in February 2024. The property has an irregular shape and was an industrial site, so it does not have a historic residential development pattern. The 2 lots created by the plat are appropriate. Guidelines recommend that parking should be at the rear of the building and accessed via single driveway from the street if no alley is available. The board approved the general location of the proposed future parking access from Oswald Street in February 2024. Apart from the proposed access point off Oswald Street, staff recommends that the proposed future parking lot be approved as part of a future application, since design details are likely to change based on future submittals. The applicants are proposing an intermediate gravel drive and parking with parking behind the building and access via Oswald Street. While the intent of this parking is to be temporary, it has to be considered as if it is permanent, meeting all zoning standards, since there is no guarantee if or when it will be removed. The location is appropriate and the singular access meets the guidelines. It should be noted that the sidewalk along Oswald Street is not required by city engineering, but if it is constructed, it must meet the city's standards. The sidewalk is still depicted in the site plan, but it's not called out specifically to be constructed. The front setback has been increased slightly from the previous submission to allow for front porches, which are between 1 feet 10 inches to 2 feet 4.5 inches from the front lot line. The steps project from the building and appear to connect with walkways to terminate at the front lot line. The final site plan should feature walkways from the porch to the street or sidewalk. The private patios along Oswald Street were revised to front porches that are flush with the main massing, with a simple metal hand railing and steps projecting to the street from each side of the unit, screened by a brick knee wall. The porches increase the building's interaction with the street and follow the guideline recommendations. The placement of the recessed staircase makes the porch space usable and large enough for seating. The removal of the second-story balconies along Oswald Street helps align the building with its single-family context. While the porches are similar to those that were approved in 2024, the metal hand railings and brick knee walls are more modern than the context and do not reflect the details of historic porches in the area, which are more likely to use stepped brick wing walls and more detailed metal railings. The board should discuss whether revisions should be made to the porch railings and brick knee walls. 2 pedestrian entrances have been removed from the central building section, and the module pattern has been revised to be larger in scale than what was previously approved, making the vertical metal siding more visible. The board should discuss the front porch design within the historic context and the intermediate gravel drive and parking lot. Along with any necessary revisions or conditions, staff recommends approval of Certificate 9F25IH, subject to the following conditions: the final site plan, parking areas, and elevation drawings to meet the standards of the IMU zone, Article 9.3I, and any applicable standards of the zoning code and building codes, city engineering approval of the intermediate gravel drive and parking lot, its driveway access and proposed sidewalks, the proposed future parking lot to be approved as part of a future application, The final plat to meet the subdivision regulations with major changes to return to the board. The final site plan to incorporate walkways from the porches to the street or sidewalk, required landscaping in the intermediate parking area in all elevations, including native or naturalized ornamental or shade trees along Oswald Street, with final site plan and placement to meet any applicable standards, including Article 12, and be sent to staff for approval. The brick detailing on the parapets, windows, and foundation be retained, and the final material specifications to be sent to staff for approval, with cladding on the concrete block foundation as necessary.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? Hi, can you give us your name and address, please?
Hi, Savannah Reyes Dixon, 133 South Gay Street, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant. Logan had a meeting, so I'm here doing my best.
Thank you for being here. Do you have anything to add to Melinda's comments?
No, Melinda and I have gone back and forth, and she's been very helpful, so I feel good about the staff's recommendation as well as their conditions.
Great, thank you. Then we'll open it up for discussion.
I had one question, more granular, but on the looking at the front porches, anything that doesn't have an awning that's dying into an adjacent wall. There's a column, and they're rendered currently in the elevations as wood. They look like wood if you can find one of the colored elevations. But what's the intention of that? Because it seems pretty stark compared to the kind of gray brick that you're showing right now.
I mean, we're open to altering that in any way, but the houses all have wood columns or like I think one of them might have a steel column, but they have wood elements part of their front porches.
Yeah, and I think that's probably why I'm bringing it up, because the wood that are there currently with the 3 homes are painted, and they look a little under. Let's say referencing those for this project, I think, is unnecessary, because this project, I think, is a bit more refined. The kind of the way the row houses look are starting. So I think in one of the renderings, you can see that it's like black in the rendering, but not in this. I just think that if you're going to have the care that is that metal picket guardrails and handrails, that the column should be like a painted pipe column or something similar like that, that I know is still not as contextual, but I think it makes more sense to the material palette that you've set up with the rest of the building.
Yeah, we're definitely open. That's if y'all wanted to add a condition about either painting it or making it a hollow metal column,
Right.
We're definitely open to that.
I just want to interject for a second. I forgot to do this before we started, but Tony Allen is recusing himself from this conversation, just for the record.
I feel like last time we talked a lot about the windows. So is it that there's still just a slew of casement versus fixed, or there was something last time we talked about how the many of the casements had been made non-operable.
Yeah, so Melinda brought up that a lot of our casement windows, basically in the plan, they had switched kind of facades. So they ended up on the facades that weren't flush, like visible from the street or from pedestrian access. And so essentially she was like, can you just move them back to be street visible? And so that's what we did. And I think that it worked fine with our program. It worked fine with our plan. So that was a pretty easy update to comply with that. So there are more fixed or more casement windows on those kind of flat facades that face the street and pedestrian walkways.
The original plans from September had removed some casement windows for fixed windows, but by October they had added those back. And so this design actually results in more casement windows than what was approved in February 2024.
Okay, great. One thing too that's not showing but will be impactful in the design is I always bring up the gutters and downspouts, especially with those intermediate or the porch entries. That's going to have to go somewhere. So and that'll it'll either be guiding along the column down to the ground or otherwise. So it's not shown, and we're not reviewing and approving that today, but you can just go around any bad development and see someone not having considered the downspout. So I think be really thoughtful, especially with all the ins and outs of the brick, trying to limit as many elbows as possible. So just take that into the design consideration as part of the architecture as well.
Yeah, for sure. We're working with Civil right now on water in general. So that's something that we're kind of working through right now anyways. But thank you. Yeah.
Great.
Do we know if we're going to see the walkways to the street or to sidewalks?
So this is something we talked about with engineering too, was we took the sidewalks out of our previous, what we submitted back in August, I guess, because of concerns with proposing anything in the right of way before going to plans review and having engineering review it and stuff. And so our intention in this phase is not to include, with this building as part of phase, the whole first phase up in that kind of left corner, is to not put those sidewalks in until the next building to the south, that one, because of once construction starts, the likelihood of accidentally destroying all of those sidewalks is relatively high. And so I know that was a cost concern as well as we don't want to have to tear them up to rebuild them. And so of course, in this, when we're permitting this building, we will include walkways to the street as approved by city engineering.
From city engineering, are there any mechanisms that would guarantee that sidewalks would have to go in with a third phase?
That's something that engineering would have to review. I'm in the zoning department, so as far as an engineering response to that, I don't think I'm qualified for that, but I think they have had some back and forth, and I think there's some direction that's been given, but I'll leave that up to them.
Is there anybody here who wants to speak about this project other than the applicant before we move forward? Okay, thank you.
To address the staff's concern on the brick treatment along the street there being a little more modern, this is a new element and a new building that's while historic in character to, row houses traditionally, it isn't pretending to be part of the original neighborhood, and I really don't have any issues with it. In a way, it sort of evokes the brick wing wall of the craftsmen's in the neighborhood, and I'm okay with that if other members are, to just address the concern that staff had put forth.
Well, given the setback, and will there be room for that planter strip in front of the brick knee wall?
Technically, yes. It'll be tight, and it'll be something that we'll have to work with the new landscape kind of team office to confirm that both the plants are appropriate as well as feasible in terms of planting. And we had a brief meeting with landscaping recently where they were like, this site is so huge and it's all part of one development that there's a level of how much can we landscape throughout this development, but that this specific parcel would still have to meet all of those landscape requirements regardless.
Mm-hmm. I mean, because it is a pedestrian edge, and I think we're all hoping that the sidewalk makes it in, and we are trying to promote the eyes on the street ethos on this, that the landscape is pretty important. It can't just be river rock or something like that.
I think I was thinking of that more in this next phase where it won't have the sidewalk at first, but just how does it actually touch the street? And I think that some of the existing homes that are there beside it still don't have really very well established grass and other things like that. It's a little bit of a mess. So I know to the same point of not wanting to install the sidewalk because it's going to get destroyed during construction. I think there's got to be some focus given to just at least seeding and strawing it really, really well, so that there's every other house across the street at least has grass going up to the road, and just have that same buffer between it, and it not just be like a dirt pile and waiting for future landscape 2 years later or something like that.
Right. That is a good point as far as setting yourself up for success later, is that it actually has to have topsoil that has some nutrients, and it can't just be fill, because grass is never going to grow there otherwise. So we can't regulate that, but
you're right.
But do that.
We will definitely take that into consideration. And again, speaking with landscaping, they've been really, really helpful in giving us tips and feedback and stuff like that. So
great. Okay.
So full bed depth brick, correct? It's not going to be thin brick.
Oh, yeah.
So that's how we are going to be able to maintain the depth and the row lock and anything like that. It's the brick detail, which is another reason probably why I would be fine with the knee wall at grade 2, because I think that's a more substantial and could be, if it's built well, would be a nice material at the street rather than a parge-coated foundation or something similar like that.
Completely agree. And I agree with Perry's comment that I think it's important that we don't try to replicate history, that it's okay for history to evolve in neighborhoods as long as it's complementary to the context that's there. And I think that this does that. Does anyone want to make a motion?
Are these
I was giving an awkward silence for Cameron since it's his neighborhood, but.
Well, I was reading all the conditions before I said anything.
Okay.
I got to know what I'm agreeing to. What is it, when it says final material specification, what does that mean? Do we know if it's brick?
No, just that they send us the products that they're actually going to be using. That condition was on the original approval, so
Yeah.
we've kept some of those, just to be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
I have one question with the parking situation. I think when we discussed it last time, Colonial was the kind of the idea. What shifted there?
The fact that the entrance off of Oswald is what's going, like in the next phase when that building, that future building in this plan, the left, is built, that's where it's going to be paved and all, like there's going to be a building on top of that. There's going to be a building on top of the intermediate, but the road all the way down to Colonial is in a future phase of the development. So it made more sense to put the driveway on top of where the driveway is going to be and reuse some of that gravel, be able to not necessarily disrupt any of the land that doesn't have to be. Whereas that part is actually going, like, is planned to be part of the future parking anyways.
So for like instance, say that you're constructing that future building, where will that parking be moved to, or where will those people park?
So those people, once that building is constructed, the parking to the left of, where the mouse is right now, that is all the parking that will be constructed for both that building B and the existing building now. But that way, that intermediate is still under building C, so the people in those townhouses will still have places to park during all of that construction without that being disrupted.
Okay, yeah, that was my concern.
Yeah.
Back to the motion. Do we have one?
I would motion to approve per staff recommendation and then add the condition that the exposed columns at the porches either be painted or become a painted pipe column, something similar like that, and not just exposed wood that's currently shown in some of the drawings.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that one carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have 0 Ohio Avenue, which is 11D 25IH.
Right. This case is for a revised plat and site plan for a project with 2 townhouse buildings that were approved in June and September respectively. The second building and revised site plan approved in September included the condition that, quote, any major deviations to the approved site plan and plat, including the closure of the Ambrose Street right-of-way, to return to the board for review. The right-of-way had been closed the day before the September meeting, but the applicant did not have a revised plat at that time. Plat and site plan were revised to include the former right-of-way and a 25-foot wide access easement split between the 2 lots, which resulted in minor changes to the driveway width, building spacing, and lot widths. Although the two new lots do not recreate a 50-foot lot width as recommended by the guidelines, they are less wide than the existing 150-foot wide lot, and the townhouse units will continue the pattern of the streetscape even if the units are not on individual lots. Staff is recommending approval of Certificate 11D25IH as submitted.
Great, thank you. Is the applicant present for this one?
He should be on Zoom.
Yes, I'm here, Eric Forstall, 1920 Greenland Way with Ball Design Services.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add?
No, not this time.
All right. Do we have any board discussion?
It looks like it made the parking better. I would move to approve with staff recommendation if there's no other discussion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That one's approved. Thank you. Okay. Next up, we have 0 Bragg Street, which is 11F25IH.
Right. This case is for preliminary approval of a plat to reflect the boundaries of a tax parcel created by deed in 1976. The plat would create an approximately 34-foot wide by 71-foot deep vacant lot with frontage on Bragg Street. It would be perpendicular to and behind an existing house at 1501 Minnesota Avenue. The proposed lot would not meet the 50-foot minimum lot width or the 5,000 square foot minimum lot area required by the RN2 zone. It can only be platted if approved by the board or with multiple variances from the Board of Zoning Appeals. The Design Review Board may vary the base district regulations by issuance of a certificate of appropriateness in order to realize the principles associated with the guidelines. The guidelines recommend maintaining the existing setback pattern, quote, keeping the rhythm of spacing between houses consistent, end quote, and recreating the original lot size and historic development pattern. The proposed lot contains rear sections of 2 platted lots that are part of the adjacent parcel with 1501 Minnesota Avenue, so it would not be currently possible to recreate the original lot size. A 1.5-story building was constructed sometime between 1917 and 1935 and was demolished sometime between 1985 and 1995. You can see that here and here. If platted, this would be the only lot on the block with frontage on Bragg Street. However, there are a couple houses a couple of blocks over at 2907 and 2901 Bragg Street with frontage on Bragg Street whose rear lot line is shared with the side lot line of a house fronting on Delaware Avenue. These houses were built around 1920 and do not follow the lot lines of the 1903 plat, similar to the proposed new lot. There are numerous examples of similar non-conforming lots with frontage on the side street instead of the primary street in this part of Lonsdale, which you can see identified in this map. The lot would not disrupt the streetscape of Minnesota Avenue, and the board would review plans for new construction. However, it would lead to inconsistent spacing between the houses that does not align with the guidelines. In the opinion of staff, platting the lot can be appropriate because it reflects the historic use of the lot, recreates a historic development pattern in Lonsdale that has continued to be used, and any new construction would be reviewed by the board. The dimensions on the tax parcel were provided in lieu of a formal survey to get approval of the general boundaries of the lot prior to obtaining a formal plat. However, a form plat must come back to the board for final approval along with plans for new construction. Staff is recommending approval of Certificate 11F25IH, subject to the following conditions. Pending final approval until a formal plat prepared by a surveyor is submitted along with plans for new construction on the lot. The current file number cannot be used to indicate infill housing approval on the final plat, and the final plat to meet subdivision regulations.
Thank you, Melinda. Can you give us your name and address, please?
My name's Robert Campbell. I live in Halls, but I own the Bragg Street lot.
Okay. Can you talk to us a little bit about what the ownership structure is? You already own this lot? Do you own the house in front of it?
No.
Okay.
I bought this in a tax sale several years ago.
Okay.
And I didn't have time to go research the lot. And I went out there a week later and I thought the lot was down the street and that there was a stream, a big stream running across the middle of it. And years later, I found out that this is the current right location, but the thing that I feel helps this is it has an alley that runs down the length of the lot, which I could use the alley as a driveway and then park in the back. But I'm in hopes to put a 1,200 square foot house on it. But in talking to the codes, the best we could do was 24 wide and 50 feet long. But I'm thinking if we could do 20 feet wide and 50 and then put the bedrooms upstairs.
Mhm. So this lot exists already as a lot. We're just trying to clean up the plat. Is that?
No, I just want, the lot is level and got grass on it.
Yes, so the lot was created by deed, so it's currently just a tax parcel. It's not a technical lot of record that can be buildable. That's what you see on this
Okay.
map.
Yeah.
But it contains part of two platted lots here. And it's not been under ownership by the person who owns this house since 1976.
Got it. I think my only concern is cutting that residence off from access to the alley, but if that's already its own lot, then
The alley,
they don't have access to it now.
the alley's separate from the lot.
Okay.
Just so y'all know, we did have the person who owns this property call about it, and she did not express having any problems with it and had good things to say about Mr. Campbell.
Great. Thank you for that.
Melinda, on that other slide, I'm just curious, out of my own curiosity, that 1948, is that, was there a structure on there historically?
Yes, there was. So this is the 1948 Sanborn map. This is the structure that was there historically. This is it still there in 1985. In the Sanborn, it says it was a tin shop, so there's a chance it was probably commercial for the whole time, but it was there it was built sometime between 1917 and 1935 and was demolished sometime between 1985 and 1995.
There's actually a lot very close to where I live in Oakwood Lincoln Park that has a very similar condition to this, and it's at 2712 Kenyon Street. If you want to pull that up, it's almost exactly the same condition. It's kind of long ways along the alley with two smaller lots in front of it. It's actually even more dense than what this would be, given that there's 3 houses on the same amount of space. It works really well. I think there's no other houses that face Kenyon Street, but I think it gives a little bit more activity to that street. There's a lot of people that walk through there, and it just gives more eyes on the street, which I think is good for the neighborhood.
I think it's already a lot that has been sold separately from the surrounding lots, and so this just really makes it buildable and usable, which I think is a good thing.
I'd motion to approve per staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that one's approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
welcome.
much.
Okay, next up, we have 1212 Catherine Avenue, which is 11A 25IH.
Right. Our next case is for a new 3-unit townhouse building on Catherine Avenue. This is a middle housing project with additional design standards that are reviewed during permitting. The board focuses on how the project meets the infill housing design guidelines, but some revisions to meet middle housing standards could require additional review by the board. The average front setback of the block face is 9.5 feet, so the proposed 10-foot front setback is appropriate. The 6-car parking pad at the rear of the lot, access via the alley, is large in scale, but meets guidelines for placement. The final site plan should include walkways from the porch to the street, at least one native or naturalized shade tree in the front and rear yards, and landscaping to screen the parking area, preserving existing trees as possible. The block lacks significant context, and surrounding blocks feature modified Queen Anne cottages and craftsman bungalows, all of which are 1-story with the exception of a 2-story church. The townhouse form typically necessitates a 2-story height, but additional measures could be taken to reduce the visual scale. The design incorporates front gable massings for each unit divided by trim to indicate the separate units and break up the massing as recommended by the guidelines. The full-length front porch and its 6-inch square posts are appropriate. The depth is not specified but appears to be large enough for seating and similar in depth to other multifamily construction approved in the overlay. The proposed 4/1 single-hung windows and quarter-light panel door are appropriate. A window should be added to the second story of the left elevation to ensure sufficient transparency. The door placement on the rear elevation should be revised to align with the windows, or a window should be added to the right of each door to reflect historic proportions. The 9/12 pitch front gable massings clad in asphalt shingles and the lap siding meet the guidelines. The block foundation should be parge coated, clad in stucco, or clad in brick veneer. Staff is recommending approval of Certificate 11A 25IH, subject to the following conditions. The final site plan to meet city engineering standards and to feature a walkway from each unit to the street with minor revisions to be approved by staff. The final site plan to feature at least one native or naturalized shade tree in the front and rear yards and landscaping to screen the parking area, preserving existing trees on the lot as possible, meeting all relevant standards of Article 4.6 and Article 9.3I with minor revisions to be approved by staff. A window be placed on the second story of the left elevation. The door placement on the rear elevation be revised to align with the centered windows, or a window be added to the right of each door, and the foundation to be parge coated, clad in brick veneer, or clad in stucco.
Thank you. Is the applicant present for this one?
He should be on Zoom.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you give us your name and address, please?
Yes, Quinn Eckerly, 552 South David Lane, Knoxville, Tennessee.
Thank you. Did you have anything to add to Melinda's comments?
No, the only question I would have is for the, so I guess the first part of it we would be okay with. We will add a walkway from each unit to the street. We'll add a shade tree in the front and rear yard. We will try to preserve any trees that we can. We'll add a window on the second story on the left elevation. And we will parge coat the foundation. The main question I had was in terms of the rear door trying to align with the second story window. So with the current layout, if you're looking at the back of the house, the left of the door is a half bathroom and the right of the door is a fridge, which starts into cabinets. And so I was trying to see if that is something that there's any flexibility on in terms of not having those align. I know in past projects we've had, there's been a big importance put on windows on the front and side elevations, but not as much on the rear. And so just with how skinny these units are, it would kind of take a complete redesign to move that door.
What about the window?
Get the window. The window.
The window. Let me see. The window is, that would put it, it is the wall. It would be directly in the middle of the wall for the walk-in closet in the bedroom. So we wouldn't really be able to move that window over, like move it to the left.
But what about on the first floor? Would it be possible to add a window to the right of the door such that they straddle the window that's above them to give some sort of rhythm on that one?
Normally, I would completely agree that these need to align, but I feel like not having the window centered on the gable is weirder than moving it over. And I almost wonder if the siding pattern on the top could change to differentiate the top part from the bottom and carry that porch line around so that the top looks distinct and the window makes sense centered in the gable, and then the bottom looks distinct and the door makes sense in its own zone across the bottom. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure. So a siding change, you said?
Yeah, if you're looking at the front elevation, for example, above the porch roof, if all of that siding could be a different texture or a different pattern or even just a different color, and then that carry around all the way through the side and the back, then that could help make sense of the misalignment on the back.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm understanding now.
And I'm just putting that out there as, discussion for the board to consider.
Can we see the site plan view again so we can see how visible this backside is?
An alley. And while we're looking at the site plan, it's a little bit confusing because the side elevations do show a little bit of topography difference from front to back, but the front and rear elevations look perfectly flat. Is that true?
Yeah, so it slopes backward. It slopes downward away from so the front would be pretty level, and then there would be just a small raised foundation in the rear.
Is it the intent that the front stoop is flush with grade? There's no step up?
That would be the goal. But we could also raise it a couple blocks if needed.
Okay.
I think we should talk about that front elevation a little bit. A couple comments, like the window and doors, they have very the articulated grid patterns are a bit odd. The checkered versus the vertical on the upper glazing of the window. The columns seem really ad hoc. I know why they're laid out the way they are, but the whole, I think, beauty of the townhome is that it's missing middle housing and its density, but it also is trying to look like a modular, like a repetition of something. So the awning, the porch roof going the entire distance without a break in it seems a bit odd to me. Not that, I mean, then I think, okay, let's break it. Then it's like, well, then you're just letting water down in between them. But, and also, if we're going to talk about windows aligning, we should talk about the bottom two windows and the top three being ever so slightly off aligned on the left side. Those should try to match whenever the windows are installed. So the bottom two are just like to the left by like 4 inches compared to the windows above, if we're going to talk about alignments and things like that.
Okay, I'd be fine with aligning those windows. That would be no problem. In terms of the breaks, yeah, I don't really know how we would do. That would be outside my expertise. I would have to check on that in terms of how we could do breaks, and then also in terms of where the water runoff.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. The gutters, you're going to have gutters on the front and back in the valleys. So there's going to be a gutter coming down the middle of the two units, laying on the roof, tracking off and down, which is going to look pretty horrible. What are the thoughts given to the downspout locations and gutters for the project?
I'm not exactly certain in terms of you're specifically talking about the front gutters?
Yes.
Or the front? I'm not exactly certain on where the downspouts were going on that. I would have to check on that and get more information.
Would a plan be to dump the cricket gutters onto the porch roof and then drain it off either right and left end of the porch roof? I mean, I would see that being one option to avoid the either penetration or awkwardness of coming across the roof with them. But
just have a downspout going just onto the roof.
Yeah.
Just stop him.
Yeah.
I think one thing to note, and I just picked up on this, and you all may have seen this, but there is a bit of an overhang too of the second story onto that porch. So the distance of that roof that extends that full length isn't as flat. Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you.
The inset's pretty nice. It would have been great if it was just the building itself making the cover and not having the addition of the awning out from it. I think you'd be able to break up the buildings into townhouses at that point too, with a little bit more modularity between them.
I think one strategy on the columns might be, especially the ones that are two paired together, that those just become bigger columns.
Yeah.
So that there's not the awkward middle.
So just like one big column, you're saying, versus two separate ones?
Right, yeah.
Or have all of them be pairs. either way to where it's more
Yeah.
consistent.
All be pairs or even all be singles, since it is just a continuous building.
Yeah.
It could work pretty well there.
Yeah, it's the central columns that look odd. I feel like if you were to beef up the ends or the ones between the units, and it does create a longer span, but I think it would look a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if I'm hearing correctly, trying to make all the posts larger so that we could do one large post where there's two, but then that the other ones also be the same size so that they don't look different.
Yeah, and I think, Tony, if I'm interpreting what you said correctly, that maybe even losing the one that's to the left of the door.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, if we could just get the columns big enough to where that span increases so that it's going from edge to edge of each module, then it looks a little bit less cluttered. And yeah.
Okay. That'd be no problem.
I do agree with the comment about the glazing in the door. I think, the 4/1 on the windows is a pretty common like craftsman look, but it's that grid of all the panes and the doors. To me, I think I just make it a single light, like make that a half glass door, and it's not got a grill or divisions in it.
Yeah.
I also, the back doesn't bother me too much, the misalignment of the door and the window. It's not uncommon, in these neighborhoods to see that misalignment. It sometimes confounds me and drives me crazy, but it's also like even in the old houses, like it's the original ones, they're often misaligned. And since it's on the back and facing an alley, I suspect that won't be a disruptive part of the facade.
I agree. I do agree with Cameron's comment, though, that those bottom two windows need to scooch in to align with that left edge of the top windows.
Sure. We can absolutely do that. That's no problem.
What is the depth of the front porch?
8 feet.
Is there any intention to put, and apologies if this has been answered, but is there any intentions to put a deck on the back, or is it just the stairs?
It was mainly just going to be stairs, but that was going to be one thing that I was hoping to note, and it was said, I think, in the intro of like how the parking lot is, I don't know the exact words used, but kind of oversized. It was pointed out to me that it is almost double what is like the needed parking, and so we were hoping to put a note like upon meeting obviously engineering standards, if that parking lot could be made smaller, and so that there could be some added green space, in which also then it would give us a little bit more room to have a little bit more of a porch there rather than just steps.
Yeah, I think more green space would be really great there, because it's almost like half the lot's gravel.
Yeah, and just some like pedestrian space between the stairs and the front of where the car goes, just like a walkway and some planted area would make a big difference.
Yes. That would be our entire goal of making the parking area. It looks like it would minimum have to be like 31 feet, where right now it's I believe it's like 54. So that would allow us a lot more green space. We could kind of dress that up in terms of having a little landscaping back there and also have a little bit more room instead of just steps.
I had a quick question. The proportions of the site plan on the top left in yellow and then the site plan on the right don't match. One's much skinnier and longer. What am I missing on that?
Yeah, so the standard map for the KGIS is, if you look there, if you see the site, the city board map, it is actually that entire 113 R1 there, not just that what was highlighted in yellow.
Can you go back to the site, the aerial picture?
Yeah, there's currently just discrepancies between the parcel boundaries and the plat, but that would have to be rectified during permitting.
You're not demolishing the house to the left. You're just building on the lot to the right as well.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, so even that little shed in the neighbor's backyard isn't even on our lot. And so according to our surveyors and when they did some looking at past deeds, that it is what's shown in the city ward map, but not like the standard map from KJS.
Okay. So you're having to clear. I'm looking at a street view. You're having to clear the trees that are. It's almost like a line of trees that you'll have to clear.
Yes. Yeah. So unfortunately, that row of trees, it would be, I think, pretty much right in the middle of where the homes are going to go. But we do hope to keep some either in the rear or on the, if you're looking from Catherine Street, on the right side. So we're going to try to preserve as many trees as possible, and then would be fine with the suggested planting of a shade tree in the front and rear yard as well.
What's the floor-to-floor height of the buildings? Because when you look at that right elevation, given the way you inset the entry and then the height of it, it's pretty. The proportions are not that great. What's the floor-to-floor height?
They have it as 8'9" to the top of the first plate, and then 8'1".
These are just pretty shallow buildings, is what it is. So they're not very long.
No, they're 29 foot long. Or sorry, the second floor is that they're 32 feet long with the front porch. So the front of the front porch to the very back is 32.
So on the right elevation, it looks like there's a step up onto the porch. So there's no like accessibility goals or anything like that for this project. Is that right?
No, there's not.
Okay. So you mentioned before that it might be possible to put the porch up a few blocks to raise it off the ground. Is that a deal breaker for you, or you're willing to do that?
That's not a deal breaker.
Because typically we try to promote that the porches are up a little bit and have a few steps up.
Okay.
And I think it would be nice to have that consistency from front to back.
This is a small touch, but something that might make a big impact on the overall look when it's done, especially if you take that pair of windows on the bottom and left justify them to align with the left side of the upper windows. On the upper triple windows, you've got big mullions between each window, maybe 5 or 7 inches, which is a more traditional look. Like that looks more like a window with weights in the mullion. But downstairs, you don't have that details. I'd probably try to make that, I'd make that consistent top to bottom. So that 5 or 7 inches between windows is also on the downstairs windows.
Mm-hmm.
I see what you mean. Mm-hmm. We can do that.
Thanks.
Any other discussion? We have a few amendments that we discussed, so if anyone wants to make a motion, we will.
I'll give it a go.
Yeah.
I will make a motion to approve with staff recommendations and a few extra conditions that the glass in the doors be without divisions or grills, that the porch finished floor height be 8 to 16 inches above grade. Is that a good range? That the lower level windows, double windows facing front, left align with the second level windows, and that the mullions size is consistent.
Columns.
And that the columns on the front porch be enlarged in size to probably 8 to 10 inches in cross section or face frontage, and that they be singles with, I think it's kind of 2 per unit essentially. I get it?
Yeah. All right, we have a motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion.
Real quick, are y'all still wanting to keep condition 5 about the placement on the rear elevation?
I would strike that.
Are you okay with that, Tony?
I have just one quick question. If they did revise the rear and did a porch, would that be something that would need to go back to staff, or
No, that would be a staff level approval. It wouldn't go to the board unless it was something major to the facade or major changes to the site plan.
I'll add another thing. If we're going to raise it by a couple of block, is it going to be enough that it's going to trigger a guardrail, or is it just an elevated porch like that just falls off 16 inches on the sides?
I don't think it would be required by code. I
Yeah,
think
the
it's
intent is to not change it to require a guardrail.
Okay. The guardrail will be weird because then you'd have to separate them, or you wouldn't
Yeah, we're
separate
not-
them. It'd be like it'd be like a grand porch that goes on for 60 feet.
Yeah, we're not. I don't think that's the intent. I think
No.
just
That would be
raising
fine.
it
We
off
can
the
definitely-
grade level is the intent.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we can definitely keep it low enough to not have guardrails then, which would be preferred for us too.
I'll second Sarah's motion.
Tony already
Oh,
did.
sorry. I need coffee.
Okay, we have a motion and a second and a clarifying question. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that one carries. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next up, we have 816 East Churchwell Avenue, which is case 11C25IH.
Right. This next case is for a new 2-story, 4-unit townhouse building with 1 unit facing East Churchwell Avenue and 3 units facing Huron Street. The front elevation is along East Churchwell Avenue. Y'all may remember we did have a case for a single-family house approved on this site earlier this year. The 4-unit townhouse building is allowed on this lot by right through the Middle Housing Standards, and the Design Review Board review focuses on how the project meets the infill housing design guidelines. Some revisions to meet Middle Housing Standards could require additional review by the board. The average front setback of the block face is 29 feet, so the proposed 23-foot front setback is appropriate. The 4-car parking pad at the rear of the lot, access via the alley, meets design guidelines for placement. The final site plan should include native or naturalized shade trees along East Churchwell Avenue and Huron Street. The block to receive new construction is characterized by 1 and 1.5-story minimal traditionals and infill construction. The front elevation is similar in scale to the block, but the building is significantly deeper. The long elevation along Huron Street will create a streetscape pattern comparable to the context. The visual scale of the 2-story building is increased by its raised foundation and the property's slope. Additional measures could be taken to reduce the visual scale. The proposed entry stoops are similar in scale to others approved on multifamily buildings within the overlay and help divide the units. The building features butterfly roof forms, which are a more modern form with a lower pitch than the 612 minimum typically approved within the overlay. However, the roof form of the front elevation is very similar to 811 and 815 East Churchwell Avenue down here. Modern roof forms have been approved on multifamily construction within the overlay, and there is currently no residential development along this section of Huron Street where the roofs will be most visible. The board should discuss whether the roof forms are appropriate. All elevations feature sufficient transparency, and the single-hung windows and half-light panel door match the context. Fixed windows are not typically approved within the overlay, but are compatible with the building's more modern design. The lap siding, asphalt shingles, and parch-coated block foundation meet the guidelines. The board should discuss whether the roof forms and fixed windows are appropriate. Staff is recommending approval of Certificate 11C25IH, subject to the following conditions. The final site plan to meet city engineering standards with minor revisions to be approved by staff, meeting applicable standards of Article 4.6 and Article 9.3I with major revisions to return to the board. The final site plan to include native or naturalized shade trees along East Churchwell Avenue and Huron Street, the architectural brackets and shakes on the entry stoops to be retained, and the siding to be clapboard style lap siding as opposed to Dutch lap or flush panel siding.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? Give us your name and address, please.
Hello, I'm Jonah Pruitt. I'm the architect for this project, and the address is 1545 Western Avenue, Knoxville, Tennessee.
Great, thank you. Do you have anything to add to Melinda's comments?
The big thing for this project, I know it's a little outside of the traditional infill guidelines, but ownership and I felt we had like a really interesting contextual building, 2 of them across the street. They're both from the 60s, and they feature this kind of funny Claire story. I haven't had a chance to really study these buildings, but I was really charmed by them. And that was the leaping off point for the entire design of the building. And navigating the slope kind of up into the back really kind of required some creative thinking with the roof. A lot this, even though the inspiration came from this, older building on the block, this roof form is really about negotiating this slope and isn't an arbitrary thing. No matter what you do to try to work with this slope, the roof is going to have a lot going on as part of the architectural idea. It was mostly to try to keep it consistent. So the front unit has a way that it is to reference the buildings across the street and kind of repeating that partie up the hill to allow for a very interesting potential for window patterns, for really, architecture that kind of pushes it just a little bit. That was the goal.
Great, thank you. Before we get into board discussion, is there anybody else who wants to speak regarding this project? Can you please come forward, giving us your name and address, please? I understand. I am also freezing.
My name is Chris Schubert. I own 808 East Churchill Avenue, which I believe is the oldest house on that block. I was told there's supposed to be just a single-family resident going on in that house, in that lot, which fits the neighborhood. If you look at the block, it's just 4 houses, most of them fairly small. And the one house, 814, actually has a driveway that comes through 816 to get to her house, which has a carport on it. So when you develop that, she's going to lose that, which not really my concern as much, but the fact that Huron is a very steep street. So these places are going to be growing in height as they grow. There's windows in the back of them. So basically, we're going to lose all our privacy in our backyards. I just don't feel the structure fits the neighborhood. It really should be just a single-family resident house, which is all around the whole blocks. You have nothing like this in the neighborhood. And the houses that he's referring to, the same type of design, those are the houses across the street, which they kind of look a little bit different, but their windows are way up high. No one can ever see out of them. They're possibly the same way with this one, but basically the people in this block are going to lose most of their privacy. You're going to increase the parking situation, which is terrible on this street. The police station just got put in, so there's mass traffic all the time on this street where they already have no parking. So you eliminate the driveway to 814th, means she has to park on the street too now, as well as how many people are you going to have in these units? And will they end up being for sale units or will they be for rent units? Because I know the structures I've seen come up like this down on Woodland were on the market for months, never sold. Now they're rentals, and I believe one of them still up for rent. So that's another concern. Is this going to be people living there? Are we going to have more rentals? Yep. I don't know. I don't really feel like it fits the whole neighborhood at all. It should just be a single resident house there versus, stacking 4 units there, which is just going to create a lot of problems for the rest of us there. So.
I understand. Thank you for sharing your comments. If there's anything else, then raise your hand and let us know. Thanks. From there, we'll open it up to board discussion, and I'm sure we'll have some questions. So Jenna, if you want to pop back up, that would be helpful.
So what did alter it from the original single-family home to go into the townhouses?
That was a decision by ownership. So the lot was purchased, and the driveway, I believe, that is there had no easement to it.
Right.
So that was a non-legal driveway connecting the neighbor's lot to the street. So that there is no easement. There was nothing on the plat about that. So it is. We're going to be removing that, and that will be it's part of our lot.
Mm-hmm.
Is the intent that all of the residents of this new development park on the street?
Well, we have the 4 units.
You have some.
And then because of this being middle housing, technically we are within a quarter mile of a transit route. So actually 0 lots are required before are provided.
Okay, thank you.
As ownership, I'm Spencer Stanley, and my address is 8160 East Churchill Avenue. So I actually spoke with the neighbor, the lady who owns, I think it's 812 there, directly beside of it. And she purchased that lot after I purchased the other lot, and there was no easement through it. And she was well aware of that, and we spoke and were on good terms. And so just she is totally aware that that will be taken up.
Okay.
I mean, just discussing the project, like, let's say that we're not looking at all the context, but then we'll talk about that too. But I think it's intelligent the way it negotiates the pretty steep grade. So, I mean, I also appreciate that the front street facing house, I guess that's Churchwell, east-west.
Mhm.
I mean, it looks like a single-family home. Like, it's just kind of like the skies of the rest of it behind it. And I know that street too has really, really tall porches because of all of the because of the grade. So even the infill house that we had that was a single family home before was negotiating a pretty high porch at the front. I will say too, I think we're going to see a workshop later today. I don't know if that workshop has anything to do with it, but I know that the adjacent properties across the street are slated to be multifamily down from St. Mary's. Again, that's hearsay until it's actually, but the discussion of parking, I live a few more blocks north, and that's just every bit of our neighborhood. Parking is an issue, and I think that these won't exacerbate the parking much more than even a single-family home, given the fact that it's even 4 spots. So it's a bigger issue than this project when it comes to the parking, at least. The car is the issue, and mass transit is the issue.
I'll say I think that compared to a lot of the stuff that we see as far as duplexes, townhouses, and that sort of thing. I mean, this to me is probably one of the more thoughtful ones that I've seen, in just thinking about the context of the neighborhood. I don't know. I really like the project, and I think it's a neat adaptation to this area, or addition to the area.
I just want to clarify, we're not evaluating whether or not this density can be put on the site. It's already established.
It's allowed.
Yes, that's correct. It's allowed by right through middle housing. So if this property was not within the infill housing overlay, they could do a building like this without having to go through review.
Mhm.
Y'all don't have the authority to regulate use, just design.
Yeah.
Okay,
thank you.
Is there a sidewalk on the hilly street? Is that?
Not currently, and part of this project is putting one in. So along Huron Street, that whole sidewalk is part of our project to add that to connect Churchwell up and around towards where I believe the pickup spot for the bus is a little bit beyond there. So it was an important part at the onset of the project to establish that we're providing this sidewalk that connects. There's like a little bit of sidewalk next to the alley and a little bit of sidewalk at the front, and this project would connect the two.
Mr. Owner, how did you get so easily on board to do a sidewalk when we're always fighting for sidewalks, and you just preemptively did it?
Well, I built the ones on East Woodland that were referenced earlier, so I kind of understand, the need for sidewalks. And when I'm out there building, people are running and walking their dogs all the time. And I love Old North. And so, yeah, I'm just, I'm on board to make the area better and to increase the, increase the maneuverability.
Yeah, the walkability of it.
Would you address his concern about the vistas, the views out the back of the house to the house behind it?
Yeah, reviewing this, I think those windows on the second floor, they do go into bedrooms, so they at least need to be egress with, but I think we can take a look at making them smaller so that there is less opacity on that side because there are no opacity requirements along that side. We can make those a little bit smaller to decrease the amount of open area along that. And then the windows on the first floor below, I believe most of those are into the kitchen. I'd have to review, but I think we can take a look at making those windows smaller as long as they're egress appropriate to kind of accommodate some of the privacy concerns, and I think that would go a long way.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the intent for the materials, especially on the base where the grade steps up and underneath the porches?
Yeah, the goal for that would be a parge coat for a CMU foundation. That is like the dominant form. There's not a terrible amount of brick in this neighborhood. I would prefer brick, but that's not necessarily part of this area's look. The parge coat is a little bit more conforming.
And then fiber cement siding?
Yeah, fiber cement lap siding, probably smooth finish, to kind of mimic a clapboard look.
And then is that a metal roof?
Metal roofs have been removed from the project. They're all going to be architectural shingle.
Honestly, the architectural shingle might, even though I don't like asphalt shingle, it might have actually more of a contextual look to it.
Yeah.
That was the idea as well. It as stated in the report, this is largely a modernist minimal infill neighborhood. So trying to keep it within like a relatively standard palette was a goal at the outset.
And then gutters and downspouts. It looks like a really sort of interesting patterning of how the water's going.
Yeah.
But eventually it's going to empty out over the porch and then down pretty close to a public way. So whatever that landscape is right in front of the porch is going to be pretty important.
Yeah, if you look at the site plan, I think we have like a pretty big distance from the public way. So that would be the right-hand side. So it isn't directly onto the sidewalk. I think we have like a good 8 to 10 feet between the edge of the stoop and the beginning of the sidewalk.
And then the downspout just comes down that column.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's notable too, that is a bit lost in that street elevation of Huron is actually how far you are away from the road. So like their scale isn't as imposing for the fact that a human won't be walking like right next to the entry stair. You'll have a pretty good separation in the front yard, which actually is going to help break down the scale a bit more.
And there were comments about trees, and those are being addressed in further revisions that are ongoing.
And will they be in that little front yard area?
In the front yard and the side yard. So both, yes.
Around the corner.
It's going to be pretty nice to have each of those trees going down that sidewalk. Yeah, that would be. I mean, to the comment about the privacy, though, I do agree. I mean, I understand, like, that you've got your backyard and there's nobody, and now you've got 4 units. So, I mean, the size of the window is one thing, and I don't think that's going to keep someone from like looking out the window. But it's also like It's the opposite, or it goes both ways. The person in the backyard can be looking up at the window.
Yeah.
So it goes, we could be looking at each other.
It's just the productive density, and
Yeah.
that's why I made the point about this already being allowed on the site. And I live in South Knoxville, where there used to be nobody, and now there's everybody. And so there are some growth pains that go along with that, and having people near when you're not used to having people near, and that's relevant and a concern, but it's not something that we can regulate on this board. So I just want to make sure that you feel heard and understood, but I don't think there's anything we can do about it here today.
Yeah, I mean, the windows in the back couldn't be removed because of egress needs for life safety, correct?
On the second floor.
On the second floor, so they'd have to be able to jump out of that window if there was a fire.
Mhm.
So you can't do like a clear story band because nobody could get to it.
Exactly.
Is there any landscape between the properties? Like
That's what, to get those nice big front yard on the corner, that's where we had to kind of eat up. So it
Gotcha.
is right at like the 5 feet
There's
setback for
nothing
the
there.
interior side.
But and then the property that you said you spoke to the owner had spoke to the owner, there's nothing, it's just grass.
Do you use that main front sidewalk to get to each unit from the parking area?
That was the design intent, yes.
But there is a little strip of yard to the back.
There will be. The
Okay.
parking layouts changed a little bit in revisions from comments from engineering. So there is a little bit more green on the back now, given some shifts around.
Yeah. And I can't remember what the back looks like. Are there stoops there where those little doors are?
Oh, those are
crawl
space
doors.
access
Yeah,
hatches,
okay.
yes.
Gotcha.
On the front side, just to clarify, the stoops that are there, that'll be part of the foundation. That's not going to be like a deck on the front.
They're as drawn. They're going to be part of the foundation.
Okay, thank you. We've seen that recently. Not being
It's a
the
touch
case.
trickier, but it's going to be worth it for
Okay.
the look.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I appreciate the restraint with the materiality and the thoughtfulness of using that slope to your advantage. I think this will be a good addition to the neighborhood, especially given the location and proximity to the St. Mary site. And the fact that you're adding sidewalks, I think, is just a huge plus for the whole neighborhood. I'm also concerned about those windows. I think living behind there, I would be concerned as well. It sounds like you're going to address those. And then my only other concern is I guess critique would be that the brackets, they look a little bit undersized for the weight of those overhangs. I'm curious what the rest of the board thinks, but if
The
there's
big
any
thing
way,
there is headroom because there's stairs coming up right under them. So I tend to
Oh, I
agree.
see.
Yeah, so I want to avoid any bonking situations.
Can you go back to the floor plan, please? Is there any opportunity in that relief? There's not. I was going to say in that rear area to put an egress window in the inset where it turns.
Yeah, from the other side for that rear unit. I think there probably is. If you go to the elevations, so there are windows on that back elevation in that bedroom that could be appropriate for egress. So maybe that could be for the unit that is the absolute tallest because it is at the edge there. We can turn that corner and kind of let that wall be blank. I think that would be like a worthy compromise about the egress issue up there.
Is there where the little square windows are? What is that space beyond?
Those are into closets.
Okay. So is there any way that those closets could push in to put an egress window on the concealed face? Yeah.
That's only 2 feet deep, and I think it would be an egress window like I've never seen before.
Right.
That and those are also fire separation walls, so we would get into some pretty hot water. I'm like they say, anything can be done. It's just a matter of it'd be a lot to figure out.
Okay. Do we have any further comment?
I was going to say, I'm inclined to make a motion to approve based on staff recommendation.
Would y'all like to add any conditions about changing the windows on the rear elevation?
I'm not sure how you're laying out those bedrooms, but would it be possible to minimize the width of the window to the minimum? I think keeping the height, but maybe just having a single window as opposed to the ganged, something like that.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be a single window back there, and like the minimum for a single hung, which is what we're going for on this project, is about 3 feet by 5 feet. That's about the size that you can get in terms of shrinking down for an egress window with that type. So as drawn, they're 2 ganged together, so it's 2 3 by 5 windows. I think I'd be open to seeing about paring that down to 1 window up there as opposed to the 2.
What would be what's in the downstairs double windows? Is that a living room?
That's over the sink in the kitchen, I believe.
So, I mean, there's the opportunity like both could be just singles.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
And that could say like, no, we are still going to have transparency, but we've tried to reduce it as much as possible, still within the means that we need to for life safety.
Mm-hmm.
So approve based on staff recommendation with the condition that we reduce it to just one single window on the back
On the first
on each level.
Each level, yes.
Mm-hmm. I'm okay with that.
Per
each unit, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And are the windows from the closets necessary? I mean, and I guess those are probably up high,
Those
so
are
they
up
don't really
high.
affect anything other than
Yeah, I
providing
think
natural
they have
light.
a head height of 7 and then like a sill height of 5 feet, so they're up pretty high and away.
Got it. Yeah, I don't think those would be an issue. Well, I will make a motion.
No.
I have a motion.
Oh, you already had the
I have a
motion.
motion. I just need a second.
Jinx.
There we go.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we
I'll
have a
second.
second? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that one carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, everybody, that is. No, we've got more on the back. Okay. Sorry. Next up, 3430 Gap Road, which is 11H25IH.
Right. Our final cases today are for 11H, I, J, and K, 25IH for revisions to plans for single-family houses along Gap Road, approved in June 2024. And we'll review all of the 4 cases at the same time. These projects are coming back to the board after deviations from the approved plans were identified during inspections for 3430, 3436, and 3442 Gap Road. 3500 Gap Road has not yet been built, but the plans will be revised in a similar manner to the adjacent houses. The houses are on a block that lacks context and features a significant amount of recent infill construction. The primary revisions that require board review are the structural changes to the facade that exceed what staff can approve administratively under the zoning code. The projecting front gable massing on the left side of the facade was removed, and the 8-foot deep front porch that was previously recessed under the primary roof line has been projected forward under a smaller secondary gable roof, forming a massing on the right side of the facade. The site plan that was reviewed by the board in July 2024 depicted a 4-foot, 5-inch deep front porch, while the floor plan showed it as 8 foot deep. The conditions of approval required, quote, a revised front porch design to measure at least 8 feet deep to rectify the discrepancy between the site plan and the floor plan. The conditions also required that, quote, the siding to be horizontal lap siding instead of board and batten, and that the, quote, design be revised to differentiate from other adjacent new construction on Gap Road, board approving variation in siding materials on end gable. The applicant revised the elevation drawings and site plans and provided renderings of each house to meet all of the conditions of approval when applying for permits, which were approved by staff. However, the front gable massing that was constructed is not consistent with the slight projection that was depicted in the revised site plan, nor was it reflected in any of the other plans approved with the permit, including the elevations, floor plan, roof plan, or foundation plan. With that being said, the revised facade design is similar in scale to others on the block, still retains the 3-bay composition, and aligns with the guidelines. Additional revisions were made to architectural details of the projects. All doors were revised to quarter light panel doors. The windows in the front gable were removed. The porch posts were reduced in size from 10 inches to approximately 6 inches, and the accent siding was removed from the gable field on the rear elevation. The 10-inch trim boards at the base of the gable fields on the facade and rear elevation were removed. Different accent siding types and hand railing, different accent siding types and placement and hand railing designs were used on the facade than what was proposed in permitting. The 2/2 windows were revised to a 1/1 profile. The railings for 34, 42, and 3500 Gap Road, that's these two right here, are not yet installed, but they should align with the metal hand railing with balusters and gables that were originally approved. Or they should be wood hand railing with simple balusters. These revisions do not conflict with the guidelines, but result in less detail that aligns with the context. The houses were clad in Dutch lap siding, which is typically discouraged in the overlay because the guidelines recommend that clapboard style siding be used. A farmhouse style bracket and shutters were added to the gable field of 3430 Gap Road and are proposed for 3500 Gap Road. And these details are typically discouraged because they do not reflect original or historic architecture. It is not clear whether trees in the front and rear yard have been planted from the submitted elevation photos. A native or naturalized shade tree should be planted in the front and rear yard of each house. The board should discuss the modifications to details on the facades, the hand railings, and the siding. Staff is recommending approval of certificates 11H, I, J, and K 25IH, subject to the condition that a native or naturalized shade tree be planted in the front and rear yard, with the additional condition for 11J and K that the front porch posts to be at least 6 by 6 and the railings to be metal with balusters and cables or a wood hand railing with balusters, and another condition that was not in the original staff recommendation for 11K, that the final site plan meets city engineering standards with minor revisions to be approved by staff.
Thank you. Is the applicant present for this one? Can you give us your name and address, please?
Yes, Kaya Arian, representing Bait Development at 800 South Gay Street.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add to Melinda's comments?
Yes, which one would you like to start with?
The first one, 11H25IH.
Okay, would you mind putting up the site plan for me? So you can see reflected in the site plan that we did increase the depth of the porch by 8 feet, and this necessitated a change in the roof line. And this site plan was approved. Do you mind zooming in? Any one of the lots, they're near identical. I believe the board's main concern originally was that it was not recessed underneath the roof, and that is why we changed it the way we did. We extended the roof line to cover the porch, which also is now 8 feet deep.
So say again why that change had to happen?
The COA from June, or I'm sorry, July 24, required that the porch be 8 feet deep. And so the only way to get an 8-foot deep covered porch was to
Move the roof line.
Change the roof line accordingly.
And in this way, it keeps the double gable appearance. If you could show the rear of the roof, the rear side, it's a good example of how if we didn't change the roof line, it wouldn't have given the double gable appearance in the front.
Also, the left side of the house would have had 3.5 feet overhang covering it. So if you go back to the site plan, you can see it was anticipated that the right side of the house would project further than the left side of the house.
Okay, can you give us your name and address too,
I'm
please?
sorry, I'm Dawn Arian. I'm also with Bait Development.
Great. And same address?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. So you're saying to retain the double gable front and get the depth of the porch, the roof line had to change?
Correct. And I guess it was unclear during a year and a half ago that something needed to be added to the file to reflect that. And so what's in the file is the originally submitted plans from the very beginning of the permitting process.
Can you go to the view that shows what's been built?
So what's been built has an overhang over a porch, a front entry porch that's 8 feet deep, as opposed to the adjacent renderings on the left that have no overhang and no front porch, or no 8-foot front porch. So we wouldn't have approved the ones on the left.
Yes, they were purely just for the showing of the differences between the color and the materials used to differentiate each house. That was the intent of those original renderings.
Those renderings were provided on these permit plans that you see here. So this is what the actual elevation drawing looked like. And you can see here, front porch, 8 foot deep is shown.
And that was what was reviewed last year?
What was reviewed last year were these plans right here. The main difference is that here you see where the note was made about the front porch being 8 foot deep. The plans that were approved with the permit, or I'm sorry, the plans that were originally approved by the board had a site plan that showed the porch being 4.5 feet deep, and the floor plan and the elevation drawings indicated that it was 8 foot deep and recessed under, and recessed here where it was shown.
So what was built sounds like what was shown in the application to the board.
Yeah, if you look at that elevation, you can see that the left side gable is extending beyond the right side gable.
By about 2.5 feet.
So, well, yeah, the original porch on the original blueprints was 4.5 feet deep. And so now it's,
It's revised according to the original COA.
So you essentially move the gable from the left to the right in order to cover more porch.
to cover the additional porch depth, yes.
I think that's a good move. I find it unfortunate that it wasn't approved that way to begin with, but
To be honest, we thought it was approved given the site plans. There was no request for a renewal of rendering, so we didn't know this was an issue.
That's what I'm struggling with, is if it was shown on the documents that we saw and reviewed as 8 feet deep, then where's the inconsistency?
The inconsistency was that it showed that the 8 foot deep front porch was recessed under the primary roof line as opposed to being under a new projecting gable massing on the right side of the facade. essentially the facade was just flipped a little bit. Again, staff has no concern about the design. It's just not something that we're able to approve on the facade by the powers under the zoning code.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. So let's go back to what it looks like now, because that's what we're trying to approve and make right.
Is the one in the middle of the constructed elevation, is that black and white? Is that why it looks desaturated to me? I can't tell.
Yeah, so we had the applicant provided just some pictures from the street, which you can see here, and then also provided photos of each elevation with the application, and they were in black and white.
Mm-hmm. Right, and then the other inconsistencies were like the shutters being added and the ornamental detail under the gable and the siding orientation and those sort of things that weren't the same. So can you all speak to those pieces that are different from the renderings that were approved by staff?
Those renderings were given before the July meeting, and there was much discussion during the July meeting about varying the gable accent details to differentiate the houses from each other. And if you look at the original COA, approval was given to vary the gable details to differentiate the houses from each other.
These renderings were provided with the permit plans, and again, these are the types of changes that staff can approve administratively, some of these minor changes to details. It's really just the structural change on the facade that triggers something that the zoning code doesn't allow us to say is all right, even though there's no concern about it meeting the guidelines.
Really, the only image I'm looking at mostly that concerns me is the very top first one that's constructed with the shutters and the not really differentiated materials in the upper gable by just rotating the siding vertical, and it looks a little bit unfinished. The two below it seem fine. They seem like what was approved with the recessed porch too.
In that July meeting, if you look at the original COA, I was actually encouraged, and if you review the video from the July meeting, I was encouraged to add board and batten to one of the gables so they wouldn't all be shake and identical.
Yeah.
So were these submitted to staff for staff approval? Because I kind of remember this discussion.
So similar to that case we recently had on Oldham Avenue, it was during the final inspection that inspectors said, hey, there's something that isn't quite the same as the COA here. The applicant reached out to me, as did the inspectors, and that's when we discussed with management whether or not this one needed to come back through the board, and it was decided that it did because of the structural changes to the facade and the powers that we have under the zoning code.
Yeah. Can you pull up the staff comments again? What you're recommending? Yeah. So there are some comments to change some things, but holistically, what you're telling us, it's just because it's beyond your authority to not have it come back. So
Yes, that's correct. And we're not asking them to change the front porch
Right.
posts. Those just hadn't been installed yet. And so the 6-inch reflects what appears to be installed. And it's just saying the hand railing should either be what was shown here in the renderings, or they could be wood, like was installed on the other houses. And then since 11K has not yet been constructed, it's out of this condition that if they have to make any site plan revisions, that's something we can approve.
Okay. I would motion to accept per staff recommendation.
What about those shutters and?
Well, I mean, I think the shutters are an addition that's not necessary. You've already put holes in the siding, though, to put them on there. That wouldn't have been approved. You're right, Matthew. I called you Matt. I've never called you Matt. Matthew, Mr. DeVartleven. I apologize. I guess then that would also bring up the detail at the sunburst under the gable. Is that something that we would typically see in these houses either? Well, then we can add that condition to have those removed to be more conforming to the
If I
context.
If I could quickly speak to that.
Yes.
With those details removed, the house is boring as all get out.
Well, I think that would have made it not boring is that it would have been the same color, which is what you did with the other two. Is just those upper bands could have, like you said, yeah, you were asked to do board and batten, or sorry, yeah, flipped. The upper gable on the left of the top image, I'm talking about the gray and brown. If that was, another tone of gray or one of the greens or blues that are below, that would be the way to differentiate at least the massing of the two, and then it would have been very subtly different. They don't have to be wildly different in that way.
May I give our thought process on that?
Please.
So originally, we were intending to have a light blue house and a dark blue house, but we decided to have a dark gray house instead to differentiate it further. We were limited with the amount of colors we had for materials.
Yeah.
And so we chose this first house style, the one in the front top center, to have the wood accents be the thing that really stood out.
Also, the place around the corner. Remember, they were around the corner.
Oh yeah, there have been a few other houses in the neighborhood that have had this more rustic, dark tone with wood accents, and so that's sort of what we were building off of.
Yeah.
It's just a pet peeve of mine with the shutters. They're undersized for those windows. They're also just not very typical in these neighborhoods, and so
I have seen quite a few homes in this neighborhood with shutters.
Yeah.
I know they've been added after the fact, but
Okay.
they're not necessarily what we would approve on this board.
Okay, earlier it was said that neighborhoods can evolve and they can adopt some new design elements over time.
Yeah, not shutters though. I would say one thing to help, since we're not supposed to sit here and design it for you. We were talking about this, but like if the gray wants to be differentiated, the trim is also painted gray as well. If you go back to that photo, like if the shutters were taken off and the trim actually got a different, like even white, which I wouldn't probably have picked white or black, like it's going to trim it out and make it look different.
It is black, by the
Okay.
way. The trim is black.
Okay.
On the top middle?
Yes.
Okay.
I do just want to note that the shutters and the bracket are proposed for 3500 Gap Road, which hasn't been built, in case the board has opinions on that.
Yeah, the design plan for 3500 was the bone light colored with the wood accents. So that was the thinking, was that we would replicate some of those elements on the last of the four houses.
The gable bracket doesn't bother me as much as the shutters, to be honest. I think I see what you're saying. You're adding wood accents to give it more warmth. So, in my opinion, I would remove the shutters, and I would be okay with leaving the gable.
Is there another type of decoration on that window that we could replace it with, since we've already penetrated the siding there?
I would normally say a thicker trim around the window to give it more presence, but in this case, since it's already built, you could size the shutters correctly. I think would make it look better.
So would slightly larger shutters actually be a suitable?
Compromise?
Yes.
Well, it's not the end of the world to replace those only pieces that got holes in them with it's lap siding. You can slide them out and slide new ones in. So I'm sure you have overage of material that you could use. So I think that there's going to be holes that have to be addressed. So if you think that the shutters should be removed, and then we can keep the sunburst or whatever gable detail, then that's how we should address it and move forward with it.
I agree with the shutters being removed just for continuity of the block, but I'm just curious, why black and white photos? Why not the
There was
colored?
some confusion about, we were discussing the roof line and the, maybe you could describe this better.
Just as
We were wanting to highlight the roof line and not get the colors mixed up in the conversation while we were still discussing the roof line, which is why we provided black and white. Does that help with the understanding? There is the colored version right below it.
Thank you.
It seems to me the biggest issue here is that the workflow of this board is that whatever's submitted and approved for a COA, if it is modified, should be resubmitted for at least staff review so that staff can figure out if we need to be consulted or not. Obviously, it's too late on several of these houses for that workflow to happen. And so on the ones that are already built, we can suggest tweaks to help them meet the guidelines more. Are we using this meeting as a platform of kind of reapproving this yet to be constructed house, the last one? And do we have, like, is there, one of these is the final proposed elevation for that? Is that right?
So the proposed elevations for 3500 Gap Road, which have not been built, were these photos here, which come from a couple of the existing houses. And so this would, account for that, so they would not have any problems with that one moving forward. I will say in terms of the workflow that you're talking about, this is part of the reason why we are, increasing the deadline to have some of this time. We have to do, especially now that our inspections have been kind of beefed up and we're catching some of these things a bit more. There's a lot of minor things that we can say, okay, it's good, you can tweak, but the zoning code just is very clear about what we can't. And so hopefully by having this revision process before y'all even see things, some of these things like having an 8-foot deep front porch would already be, shown in a more final version for y'all, so there would be less differences between what y'all see and what was approved in permitting. So that's something that we're doing for this board and the Historic Zoning Commission because we're running into some of these.
So just to clarify from a procedural standpoint, we're reviewing these together because they're related and close and the same owner, but for our motions, we want to do those separately based on each structure just to keep it clean.
We had a motion, but it was kind of unclear which.
I'd
houses we're talking
motioned
about.
him for all of them, so it was a negative.
But it sounded like there was some modifications to some of the conditions that were.
I think we were adding a condition, but given that what Suzanne just said about having to approve them all separately.
I would like to go back to that image that shows all of them. And then, no, a few more slides forward. Is this each of them?
No, this is two of them. This is 3430 Gap Road, 3436 Gap Road, 3442, and 3500 Gap Road, which is the one that's not yet been built.
Okay, so just for clarity, I know you're very familiar with these, but we're going to try to make it clear for us. So 3430 Gap Road, which is 11H25IH, is which building?
It's this building right here, and the only condition proposed for that one is that there be a tree planted in the front and rear yard. Clearly, there's one in the front, not necessarily in the rear yet, from what we can tell. This is the standard condition that's on all. It's the same thing for 3436 Gap Road. The only condition is that there be a tree in the front and rear yard.
Okay, I want to go back. We're just talking about 3430 for right now, just for my own brain's clarity. So given what Melinda just said, for 11H25IH, do we have a motion for just this structure?
This would be one that would include the condition to remove the shutters. So I would motion to approve per staff recommendation with the added condition that the shutters are removed.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second just for 3430 Gap Road. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that one carries. 3430 Gap Road is done. And we're going to move on to 3436 Gap Road, which is case 11I25IH. And that is the one on the bottom of the screen right now.
Yes, and the staff recommendation is just for the native or naturalized shade tree.
This one did not concern the railings?
No, because the railings were already constructed.
What about the columns?
The columns are already installed and appear to be 6x6.
I make a motion to approve per staff recommendation.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for 3436 Gap Road, which is 11I25IH. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that one's done. Next up is 3422 Gap Road, which is case number 11J25IH.
This one, the staff recommendation is just the tree, and then that the same metal hand railing be used or a wood hand railing with balusters.
Okay.
Can I, if I use a white metal railing there on the front?
Yeah, metal's fine. It just, the condition just says be metal with metal balusters and cables or wood hand railing. So
Okay, and
color isn't-
painting the posts that are there is okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
A motion to approve 11J 25IH per staff recommendations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for 3422 Gap Road. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, one's done. And then last up is 3500 Gap Road, which is case 11K25IH.
Again, for this one, just the same two conditions as the others, but the added condition just allowing us to approve revisions to meet engineering standards.
Got it.
But this one's going to have shutters in the sunburst.
Those are proposed right now.
Again, I haven't even began construction on this one, so
Why'd you take the window out? That's,
the gable,
yeah.
because when the porch side protruded forward, it's much wider. That gable's much wider than the, and it would look odd.
There wouldn't have been enough room.
The front gable is wider, so it leaves less room in the rear gable.
Yeah, so again, I haven't started this construction yet, so my idea was to do that bone color with the wood accents, but because there is a house around the corner that kind of has that look, but again, I could take staff recommendations for the siding details.
Are you opposed to the colors represented in the rendering?
So that ended up being house 2.
We
That
we
color.
shifted the colors around a bit so we didn't have things too similar right next to each other, just to make it look more spread and even. I believe we were planning on ivory with perhaps black accents.
Well, that more earth tone shake that was in the upper might look fairly handsome with the gray if you were to infill the upper gable with that. So that's an idea too. We don't comment on that necessarily. We'll just say like if it's differentiated material above, but
So, right, so the concern is instead of doing any other kind of like the shutters, which
right.
Do that split with the gables material.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think it's just when you did the monochromatic split, I understood you switched to board and batten. That, yeah, like you said, it wasn't probably enough for it. It needed to be differentiated in color. So if there was an accent color, I think that would help break down the scale. And the window's not there, but it's going to make that not seem as apparent. So I think that would help that one a lot.
And I think just clarifying for the future that typically things that can be construed as decorations like shutters and brackets that aren't necessary for structure are a little bit more frowned upon, and that we want to see that differentiation in color and texture, orientation of siding, things like that, that are integral to the house and can't just be kind of ripped
Understood.
off.
Thank you.
Got it. Got it.
Okay, so where does that leave us? We are talking about 11K25IH. Do we have a motion? And again, this is the one that hasn't been constructed yet.
I feel like that house would be a lot more successful if it looked more like 3442 Gap Road and like the renderings. So maybe we add a condition that stipulates that it align with that and that your differentiation is color, but that it follow the model you've set forth here instead of the one that we've got some issues with.
Yep.
Okay, so the first one has black windows, black clad windows, and the other two have white. So would that be, are you saying it to stick more with the white trim?
On an ivory house?
Well, we wouldn't necessarily do ivory if we had white. Well, we could, but.
I'm less concerned with the colors and more concerned with the cladding, and like 3442 Gap Road is nice that it's more of a differentiation from the lower clapboard siding to the upper gable siding. So that's more successful, and it also lacks shutters or the bracket. Those are all, those check the boxes better for the design guidelines than
Okay.
My,
Black one.
I do have a question. Would you be opposed to black windows and edging and such for the final house like it is on house one, especially if we go with a lighter color for the siding? I think that would actually provide some more contrast.
Can we go back to house one?
Instead of using the dark siding, use 2 different colored sidings.
Both of them light.
But with black windows.
Yeah.
Yep.
And no shutters.
And no shutters.
I think that's fine.
And then there would not be a need for a gable trim, a gable accent as well.
Correct.
So that would be eliminated as well.
Why is that?
What do you mean by gable trim?
She meant
The
Oh, you
little
mean the
wood,
bracket?
The starburst.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Correct.
Right. So that would not be on house 4.
Correct.
Right.
The 3,500 gap.
Do we have a motion on the floor? Okay.
No, we need a nice
going.
clean one.
All right. So I move, let's get the right, it's the last one here, the 11K25IH. Okay. I move to approve 11K25AH per staff recommendations and adding the condition that the COA be based on either the rendering or House 3442 Gap Road. Is that clear enough?
Is it okay if I say front elevation instead?
Yes.
Second.
Is everybody clear? Okay.
And by comparison to 3442, it means the
Contrast in color.
the siding types. Okay. Right. And the contrast.
Yes. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that one carries.
All right.
Thank you. I
Thank
appreciate
Thank
your
you.
patience.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are we done now? Okay, we're done with the body of the meeting now, and we're going to adjourn. But we do have 2 workshops. Nope, we have 1 workshop. One's been postponed. For 137 South Central Street, we're going to take a 5-minute break and then reconvene for the workshop.